Have you ever gazed up at the night sky and truly pondered just how fortunate we are? Our planet feels so familiar, so incredibly stable. But what if things were entirely different? Today, we're embarking on a journey into alternate realities to uncover 30 mind-blowing facts about how Earth might look if just one single element had changed. Prepare yourselves. By the end of this video, you'll have a newfound appreciation for our world. Our Earth truly hit the jackpot in the cosmic lottery. It resides in the so-called Goldilocks Zone, not too close to its star to burn up, and not too far to freeze solid. The perfect size, the perfect atmosphere, the perfect companion, our moon. We tend to take all of this for granted, but in reality, it's a delicate balance of dozens, if not hundreds, of interconnected factors. So what if that delicate balance were to be disrupted? And with that, let's plunge into the worlds that might have been. So let's dive into worlds that could have been. Our first segment focuses on fundamental rules, the rotation, gravity, and axial tilt of our planet. Imagine for a moment the moon simply vanished. What would change? Almost everything. Without its gravitational pull acting as a brake, Earth would spin wildly. Days would shrink to a mere 6 to 8 hours. But more critically, this extreme speed would unleash hurricane-force winds, hundreds of kilometers per hour, powerful enough to scour everything from the surface. And what if we made the planet spin in the opposite direction? Sunrise in the west might seem odd, but it's the least of our worries. Global winds and ocean currents would reverse course, utterly transforming our familiar climate zones. Next, let's tinker with gravity. If it doubled, we'd be short and stocky, with every step an immense effort like lifting weights. But what if it weakened? We'd be able to leap meters high, but our atmosphere would simply drift away into space, leaving us gasping for air. Finally, let's consider the Earth's axial tilt. Eliminate it, and seasons would vanish entirely. The equator would become a perpetual furnace, while the poles would turn into frozen wastelands. And if the axis were tilted even more dramatically like Uranus's, summers would scorch all life, while winters would freeze solid for decades. Just a few seemingly minor alterations, and our hospitable world becomes utterly uninhabitable. Now let's talk about our cosmic address, because even if a planet itself is perfect, its location is everything. Earth resides in the so-called Goldilocks Zone. Not too hot, not too cold. But this zone is an incredibly narrow strip. Move Earth just 5% closer to the sun, and we'd have a one-way ticket to a literal hell. Rising temperatures would trigger a chain reaction. The oceans would begin to evaporate more rapidly, saturating the atmosphere with water vapour. And water vapour is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. It would trap even more heat, leading to further evaporation. This vicious cycle would transform Earth into an exact replica of Venus, with surface temperatures of 400 degrees and crushing atmospheric pressure. Okay, so what if we move further away from the sun? Just a few percent. Here, a different scenario awaits us. Snowball Earth. A drop in temperature would lead to the expansion of the polar ice caps. White ice is excellent at reflecting sunlight back into space, preventing the planet from warming up. The more ice, the colder it gets. Again, a chain reaction would be triggered, but in reverse. Ultimately, the entire planet would be covered by a multi-kilometre thick layer of ice, transforming it into a lifeless ice ball. But even at the ideal distance, there's another danger: tidal locking. This is when a planet always shows the same face to its star, much like our moon does to Earth. If this happened to Earth, one hemisphere would turn into a scorching desert with eternal day. The other, an icy wasteland with eternal night. Life might potentially cling to existence on a narrow strip between them, in a zone of perpetual twilight. But there, monstrously powerful winds would constantly rage, shuttling air from the scorching hot side to the frigid cold side. Finally, a more beautiful, yet no less dangerous scenario. Imagine Earth having rings like Saturn. The night sky would be fantastically beautiful, but during the day, these rings would cast gigantic moving shadows across the planet. Entire countries and continents could be plunged into cold twilight for many hours, which would catastrophically impact the climate and agriculture. Beautiful but deadly. Okay, so we've placed our planet in the perfect orbit. But what about the air we breathe and the invisible fields that protect us? Let's take a closer look at our atmosphere's composition and its hidden mechanisms. Imagine a world with a double dose of oxygen. Sounds great, right? More energy, easier breathing. But there's a rather terrifying side effect. You see, the size of insects is directly tied to oxygen levels. Their respiratory systems aren't as efficient as ours, and at current oxygen levels, they simply can't grow very large. But double it, and you'd have dragonflies the size of eagles and spiders as big as dogs. Forests would become far more dangerous places. Now consider the opposite scenario. Less oxygen. You'd constantly feel tired and short of breath, like you're high up in the mountains. Any physical activity would be an ordeal. And here's another interesting point. Fire would be almost impossible to ignite. Campfires, internal combustion engines, everything would work very poorly or not at all. But even with the perfect atmospheric composition, it's useless if the planet lacks protection. We're talking about Earth's magnetic field. This is our invisible force field, deflecting the deadly stream of charged particles from the sun, what we call the solar wind. Remove this field, and the consequences would be catastrophic. First, all our electronics would instantly fail. Satellites, power grids, computers, everything would be fried by radiation. Second, this solar wind would slowly but surely blow away our atmosphere into space, just like what happened to Mars. And third, the surface radiation levels would make life impossible. We'd be forced to hide deep underground to survive. Now let's come back down to Earth and consider what lies beneath our feet. Water and land are the very foundation of our world, yet their proportions and composition could have been radically different. Let's imagine all of Earth's oceans were fresh water. This would fundamentally change water chemistry. Marine life, as we know it, simply couldn't exist. Fish, corals, whales, they're all adapted to a saline environment. But there's more. Salinity influences water density, which is a key factor driving global ocean currents. Disrupt that, and the planet's entire thermoregulation system would collapse, leading to unpredictable climate shifts across the globe. What if we take it a step further? Imagine Earth as a water world. No continents, just one boundless global ocean. Life would likely originate and thrive in these waters. But would an intelligent civilization ever arise? That's a major question. After all, key stages of our development, mastering fire, creating tools, metallurgy, would simply be impossible underwater. Perhaps intelligent dolphins or octopuses would remain stuck in the Stone Age. Now let's consider the opposite extreme, a desert Earth or dune. No oceans, just one giant supercontinent. Without oceans, there would be no evaporation, and thus no rain. The entire planet would be one vast, harsh desert. Life could only exist around rare underground water sources. Temperature swings between day and night would be enormous, and constant dust storms a common occurrence. And finally, the strangest scenario, a flat Earth. Of course, this defies the laws of physics, but let's humour the idea. Gravity on such a disk wouldn't pull everything down, but rather towards the centre. The further you move from the centre, the stronger the sideways pull would be. Walking near the edges of the disk would be like climbing a sheer cliff face, and the atmosphere and oceans would simply drain off the edges into space, leaving a habitable world only at the very centre of this strange pancake. So, we've explored the planet itself. Now let's turn our attention to its surroundings. What if our night sky looked completely different? For instance, what if Earth had two moons? On one hand, it would be incredibly beautiful. Nights would be much brighter. But the gravitational pull of two satellites would be complex and chaotic. Earth's tides would become far more powerful and unpredictable. Massive, tsunami-like waves would regularly crash onto coastlines, making life there virtually impossible. It would be a world of perpetual flooding. Now imagine our atmosphere was much denser, like on Titan, Saturn's moon. Due to light scattering, the sky would have an orange or reddish hue. Sounds would travel further and appear more muffled. But the most fascinating thing is that in such a dense environment, flying would be much easier. Even a person with primitive wings, made from branches and fabric, could glide through the air, pushing off the ground. Perhaps aviation would have emerged hundreds of years sooner. And now, a science fiction scenario. What if, instead of a molten iron core, our planet's centre harboured a tiny black hole? Even if its mass were equal to that of the core, its behaviour would be entirely different. It wouldn't generate a magnetic field. But the scariest part is that any black hole, even the smallest, is inherently unstable. It would slowly but surely begin to consume Earth's matter from the inside out. The planet would literally devour itself over millions of years. And finally, let's talk about Earth's crust. We're used to earthquakes and volcanoes, but these are actually signs of a living planet. What if plate tectonics didn't exist? There would be no continental drift, no mountains, no volcanoes, and no deep-sea trenches. Earth's surface would be almost flat, smoothed by erosion. And that's a major problem, because it's volcanoes and plate movement that bring essential minerals and chemical elements to the surface, elements vital for life. Without this constant churning, life would be incredibly scarce. Let's delve into a bit of biology and chemistry. What if life on Earth had taken a different path? We're used to a green world, but that's simply because chlorophyll in plants primarily absorbs red and blue light, reflecting green. On a planet orbiting a different star, like a red dwarf, things could be vastly different. To survive, plants would have evolved to absorb light from a different spectrum. Their dominant pigment might be black or even violet. Imagine a landscape of violet forests and black fields. Our familiar scenery would look utterly alien. Now let's look deep inside our planet. Our liquid metallic core acts like a giant dynamo, generating a powerful magnetic field. What if it were to cool down and solidify? Firstly, the magnetic field would vanish, leaving our atmosphere vulnerable to the solar wind, which would gradually strip it away. Secondly, all volcanic and tectonic activity would cease. No more earthquakes, no more eruptions. The planet would become geologically dead, transforming into a cold, static sphere, much like Mars or Mercury. Let's turn our gaze to the sky once more. What if our sun wasn't a solitary star, but part of a binary system? We'd have two suns which could differ in colour and size. This would create an incredibly complex and chaotic system of days and nights. Sometimes there would be one sun in the sky, sometimes two, and at other times, none at all. Earth's orbit would be unstable, and the climate utterly unpredictable due to constant gravitational perturbations. Dramatic temperature swings would be the norm. And finally, for the most fantastical scenario, a hollow Earth. From a physics standpoint, this is impossible. Gravity would simply crush it. But let's imagine it were true. An entire ecosystem could exist within, perhaps illuminated by a small internal sun. A civilization living on the inner surface would never see the stars. Their sky would be the opposite side of the sphere. It would be a completely different world with different laws and a distinct worldview. Let's explore a few more scenarios. These don't just involve outer space, but also the fundamental rules of our world and pivotal historical moments. What if water behaved differently? We know it freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, but imagine a world where water turns to ice only at -20. This would fundamentally change the climate. Polar ice caps and glaciers would form much less frequently, and only under the most extreme conditions. Global sea levels would be significantly higher, submerging many modern coastal cities. Winters in temperate latitudes would be slushy and wet, but without any snow or ice. Now let's jump back 66 million years. A giant asteroid is hurtling towards Earth. But what if it missed? Dinosaurs wouldn't have gone extinct. They would have continued to dominate the planet for millions more years. Under such conditions, our ancestors, the mammals, would most likely have remained small, timid creatures, hiding in burrows. They simply wouldn't have had a chance to evolve and occupy a dominant niche. Intelligent life, as we understand it, would most likely never have emerged. Giant reptiles would still rule the world. Let's return to the atmosphere. We know about the ozone layer. a thin layer of gas that protects us from the sun's harsh ultraviolet radiation. Now imagine it's gone. Ultraviolet rays would reach the surface unimpeded. They would literally sterilize the land, causing mutations and killing living cells. Surface life would become impossible. Perhaps it would only survive deep underwater, where the deadly rays couldn't penetrate. And for our final scenario in this segment, size matters. What if Earth wasn't a rocky planet but a gas giant like Jupiter? The gravitational pull on such a planet would be dozens of times stronger. It would simply crush any complex organism. There would be no solid surface, only a raging atmosphere extending thousands of kilometers deep. It would simply be a beautiful but utterly lifeless ball of gas, with no chance whatsoever for life as we know it to emerge. And so, after exploring all these fascinating and unsettling scenarios, we arrive at the most profound, perhaps even startling, realization. Our very existence, our civilization, the ability to breathe, walk under the sun, and simply live. All of it is the result of an astonishing stroke of cosmic good fortune. Alter even one of these 30 parameters, and the world we know simply wouldn't exist. Our planet is far more than just a rock hurtling through space. It's an incredibly intricate and delicate system where every element is interconnected, every sunrise, every season, every breath. These are not givens, but a grand prize in the universe's most improbable lottery. Thank you for joining us on this journey through alternate realities. If you found this fascinating and perhaps a bit chilling, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more mind-bending discoveries. Now, we have a question for you. Which of the alternate Earth scenarios did you find the most terrifying? Or perhaps the most captivating? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.